recording now.
Okay, I'd like to call this meeting to order. Roxanne, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Davis,
Here.
Mr. Dombrowski,
Here.
Mrs. Ingalls,
Here.
Mr. Malone,
Here.
Mr. Marshall, Mrs. McGrattan. I saw her. Where'd she go? Oh, there you are, Mary. You got to unmute yourself. Let me see if I can unmute you. Okay, she's here. Mr. Sebelia,
Here.
Mr. Soms,
Here.
and Mr. Washington.
Here. Trying to hear.
8 here, 1 absent.
Okay, so we'll apologize to our audience that this is a new platform for us as far as a town council meeting, but not new to many of us. But this is the first town council meeting that we have used the Zoom platform. So I see there are residents and property owners that would wish to speak. If you would like to speak, please type your name and address in the chat box. Betsy and Bob Graham, at this time, are you planning to speak?
Yes, we are.
Thank you.
Wait, did you want to do presentations first, Linda? Because that's on the agenda and I know that Steve has to go.
The agenda I'm looking at it is not first, but
Okay.
I'm happy to. I printed it out from the website today, and residents and property owners is first. So I will continue in that. Although, are you here in regards to the bridge improvements, Mr. and Mrs. Graham?
Yes.
Yes, we
Okay,
are.
let's have Mr. Steve Maslin speak first. I'll switch the agenda a little bit. That might be helpful to you.
You ready to roll on this?
Ready to roll, Steve.
Okay, good. Steve Maslin, Public Works Director, 24 Maple Terrace. And this is going to be pretty brief. The purpose is to update the town council on the status and developments concerning Ledyard's 2 most pressing bridge maintenance needs. And just in the broader context, thankfully in Ledyard, we don't have very many pressing bridge needs like other communities. And this short presentation will offer a starting point for the next phase of deliberations toward repair and replacement that anticipates further town council actions, which will probably start in committee. In some ways, the urgency of such actions has been increased because of certain accelerated ways in which the situations have evolved. And as Roxanne mentioned, unfortunately, I have got another commitment pressing here, so I cannot stay beyond 7:30. But there will be opportunity to delve into the full details of these matters as the deliberations continue through the official process. And I'd be happy in the interim to take any questions by email and entertain further dialogue that way. Starting with the Lantern Hill Bridge over Whitford Brook. Without rehashing the lengthy history of this, including the more recent developments that you may be aware of, suffice it to say that as much as we couldn't predict where the needed replacement of this bridge was heading, we are now in a more uncertain place as a result of the recent actions by the town of Stonington, I should say unilateral actions by the town of Stonington that have led to an immediate load limit being posted and a relatively imminent pending closure beyond this. Ledyard and Stonington had been poised to proceed with complete replacement of this bridge under the state local bridge program, according to an MOU that Ledyard has fully supported and funded, including all of the necessary town council actions up to that point. We presently have fully approved and permitted plans, but the town of Stonington effectively withdrew its support for this due to lack of funding authorization. And in light of this development, the state of Connecticut's commitment to fund has been rescinded, and we are at square one, if not at square zero with the state. And I confirmed that with Francisco Fadul, who's the agent from the state that I have been dealing with. And on top of that, our permit for this project expires in August, and there's no practical way that I know of that we can get started on this according to the rules we need to follow and before that expires. When I say permit, I'm talking about the Army Corps of Engineers permits and the Connecticut DEEP permits. I believe our local permits would extend further, but we could renew those rather easily as compared to the other permits. Now, the mayor has been in fairly regular contact with the Stonington First Selectman, and you may have seen the recent article in the New London Day just a few days ago describing approval by the Stonington Board of Finance of funding to minimally repair the bridge to keep it open at its present 8-ton posted limit. But that was with the understanding that Ledyard would split the cost of these repairs at $50,000 per town. Now, because this would be subject to further town council evaluation and approval, I suggest that this be considered in the context of a broader discussion and consideration of a shared approach between the towns to an appropriate bridge replacement project that might contemplate a reauthorization, a re-permitting, and restoration of the state local bridge program funding. So that's just where we are basically on status-wise on the Lantern Hill Bridge. So there is a threat to travel right now over that bridge apart from action that needs to be taken in the near term. Browns Crossing Road Bridge, again, without delving too far into the details at this particular point, you may know this bridge and may be aware of some of its history and issues. This is a wooden bridge, one-lane wooden bridge owned by Providence and Worcester Railroad that not only never has met modern highway rating standards, but due to progressive deterioration has been recently load limited to 3 tons. This presents obvious problems for the 3 properties, 2 of them that are occupied full-time, that are across the bridge on the Thames River side of the railroad tracks. P&W Railroad is interested in providing a full modern highway rated replacement to resolve the access limitations, and they've offered a proposal to the mayor. I have been in constant conversation over the last several months with an agent representing the railroad company in getting to this particular point. The mayor will engage the town council immediately in laying out the details in terms of the mutual agreement that has to be reached in certain ways to proceed, starting with the next meetings of whichever committees might be assigned to this. The Providence and Worcester Railroad stands ready to move swiftly toward physical replacement this construction season, as long as the parties can come to terms on the framework of the bridge construction and the long-term maintenance liability issues. So that's all I have. I do have time to listen to comments and stay for maybe any questions as well, but about 7:25, I'm going to have to turn into a pumpkin, so.
Okay. Can I ask, Mayor, would you like to comment just on, to clarify the newspaper article for the rest of the group?
Oh, absolutely. So, so I received a call from the Stonington First Selectwoman, and she had asked if we could meet for coffee on neutral soil. So we did that at the beginning of last week, at which point, because I had been pressing for doing something about this bridge, and she was probably tired of hearing from me about it, but we met and she said that she had spoken to the Stonington Finance Committee multiple times, and they were, in her words, unwilling to spend any money. And she was going to be going to the Stonington Finance Committee again to ask that they do at least do something. And they had received a report from WMC Engineers, and it outlined a couple different things. There was the $100,000 repair. There was a more robust repair, which was $450,000, and it retained the load rating, but still would need replacement within the 10-year period. And then there was the full out replacement cost of $1.5 million, which we already know. So she said she was going to be taking that repair, the $100,000 repair proposal, to the Finance Board of Stonington. And she said, if that can be approved, is that something that Ledyard would participate in? And I said, I think that we could do that if they're in agreement, because the alternative was closing the bridge completely and making a dead end turnaround on the Ledyard side as well as the Stonington side. And I thought that was horribly detrimental to everybody. So understanding that the $50,000 would only get us 5 to 10 years on this bridge, again, going back to that, I much preferred that to a full closure. I think from health and public safety perspectives, the full closure is a terrible idea. I think it makes one heck of a long dead end on the Stonington side, and it impacts all sorts of people. There's about 1,200 cars a day on average that cross that, according to the engineer's report.
Thank you. Mr. Cherry, you're up to talk next. Was your subject going to be the bridge?
Yes.
Okay, so why don't you speak next, and then I'll open it up for any questions of Steve.
We had Betsy Graham, Betsy and Bob were up first, no?
Oh, I'm sorry, you're right. Yes. Graham's, you are up next. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks.
Thank you. So good evening, Town Council members and Mayor Allen. We're the Grahams, 72A Long Pond Road South in Ledyard. And we both sincerely appreciate Mayor Allen and the Town Council members' past support towards various projects and requests on Long Pond, as well as your prior commitment to replacing the Whitford Brook Lantern Hill Road Bridge number 137-001 at the town line with Stonington. We urge you to continue to work toward a permanent solution to replacing the bridge. We know Senator Ostin is seeking funds for the bridge replacement at Mayor Allen's request. We encourage the town to support her endeavor by reaching out to all appropriate individuals. We are in complete agreement with the letter submitted by John Rodolico. In addition to the issues addressed in John Rodolico's letter, we are also concerned with the future bridge repair or replacement timeline. As you may be aware, Save the Sound, working with the Lantern Hill Valley Association, has received funding to start plans for installation of nature-like fishway into Long Pond, open up the lakes of Long Pond and Lantern Hill Pond to alewife. Connecticut Deep Fisheries is very excited about what this means to alewife populations, their future and health. As the fishway project will also take a few years, we feel it is imperative to get the Whitford Brook Bridge replaced with a long-term solution as soon as possible. The action of temporary bridge repairs will ultimately result in this issue addressed again within 5 to 10 years. Such a delay will be disruptive and be detrimental to the success of alewife return. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And could you, Betsy, could you send that letter to us as an email so we could put it in the record, your comments in the record?
Yep, thank you. I have already sent it to Roxanne.
Okay, good. Thank you. Now, Mike Cherry.
Hi, Mike Cherry, 5 Whippoorwill Drive. I want to concur with the Grahams. They're correct. And Mr. Rodolico, he's correct. I appreciate Steve being in the middle again. I know we've talked about this bridge forever. I read the article, I read John's email, and I think any repair that doesn't restore the bridge to be able to handle emergency equipment is not right. We're wasting money. And I would support bonding for our half of the $1.5 million to go fix the bridge right. And if we get money from the state, if we get money from the federal government, great. But meantime, 1,200 cars, somebody's gonna, the bridge is gonna be a problem. That is a dangerous bridge. It's in poor condition. It's on a curve. It's not wide, and it ought to be fixed correctly. So I just want to say I would support bonding to go fix it now correctly.
Thank you, Mike. Does anybody have any council members have any questions for Steve? Mike? You're muted. Okay, well, we're waiting. There you go.
Okay.
Now we know the symbol for I'm fixing my audio.
Yes, thank you. My only, I'm going to have to kind of side with Mr. Cherry, because my big concern is if we dump money into this, given what's taking place with Stonington, I'll say it, I don't have too much faith in their ability to follow through down the road, since we were in a great position before to work on this, to do the work on this bridge, get it taken care of. But the town of Stonington didn't seem as though they wanted to get on board and pay their portion. So I don't think down the road, this little repair we do for 50 grand, I think down the road, it's kind of putting money down a rat hole unless we get something a little bit bigger, more substantive. Because unless we can put emergency vehicles over this thing, it's better than nothing, but I think that we should be able to get to a point we can put emergency vehicles back over this bridge. Otherwise, that section of town is not being serviced very well, in my opinion. That's it.
Thank you. Anybody else have questions for Mr. Maslin? Okay. Good night, Steve. We'll send you on your way now.
Again, we'll be talking a lot more about these things, so.
Yes, thank you.
There's a lot more information that will be shared. There's a big consensus out there, actually beyond the boundaries of Ledyard, to get something done. You may have seen some correspondence there, and if you haven't, you'll see it during the process.
Thank you.
Okay, good night, everyone.
Good night. Are there any committee, commission, board reports?
Linda, John Rodolico is in the chat, and also Deborah Keenan is on there looking, I think, to talk.
Okay. Deborah, you're next.
Oh, hi. Yeah, as I introduced myself earlier to a bunch of you who are already here, I'm totally brand new to participating in any way, but I just wanted to say it's really very heartening to see all the good thought that goes into these kinds of issues. I've been aware of that bridge my whole life, really, and I remember this summer there were people. There was a team there for a whole day taking core samples, and it's very alarming. And then to have the signs go up saying that limiting the tonnage, it really did make me worry about what does that mean if there's a fire on this road, or I don't know anything about tonnage. So I really appreciate all the thought that's going into it, and agree that we need to be able to have emergency vehicles, and not to mention I've seen much bigger trucks, all sorts of things go up and down that road, deliveries and so on. And so yeah, it just logically it does seem that a short-term fix is if it's not going to allow for emergency vehicles, really does seem like throwing money away. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. We hope we'll see you again.
I'll be back.
Good. Glad to hear it. Mayor, you had another comment.
Yeah, I just wanted to add too that the bridge is actually on Stonington's bridge inventory. So it's technically their bridge and not our bridge. So as much as we might want to fix it and bond for it, what really scares me is setting some kind of precedent that if the neighboring town chooses not to act, well, don't worry, because Ledyard taxpayers will take care of it. We can't set that precedent. As much as I want this bridge fixed, we can't set the precedent of if somebody else doesn't want to have their responsibility, our taxpayers will come to the rescue. So just wanted to put that out there.
Thank you.
Can I ask Fred a question? What's the pushback from Stonington? Why are they running away from this? I mean, what's the justification?
So they're apparently they had spent, they had a wastewater treatment facility in Pawcatuck that they were upgrading. And in the course of the upgrade, which was supposed to be, I'm going to say $10 million, it ran $5 million over that budget. So they had to bond a tremendous amount of money, and their feeling was that they needed to pull back on all spending. But I had said to them, you know, when the first select woman had said they don't want to spend any money, I said, well, while that may be nice, that is not a realistic approach to managing a town and the infrastructure in the town. So I said, you have to spend some money, especially when it comes to public safety. So that was their thinking, and that was my rebuttal.
Thank you.
And just one question from Mrs. Graham. She asked if there's any way to change the bridge ownership.
Well, yeah, we could probably go to the state and petition the state to add it to our bridge inventory. But again, if we don't get the funding, I don't want to see Ledger taxpayers saddled with a $1.5 million bridge just because the neighboring town doesn't want to do the right thing. So I do want to see it fixed and done properly, but I have reservations about that.
Okay. Now at this time, I am going to move on to committee commission board reports. Are there any? I don't see any other commissioners here that haven't spoken. Comments of town councilors. If you want to just wave your hand, and Mrs. McGrattan. You're muted, Mary. Do this.
Unmute.
There you go. Whoops, you're still muted, Mary.
Unmute. Am I?
There you go.
Okay, good. This past week, we had 2 former town employees who died. One was Marge Ritter, who was an EMT and belonged to Elvies. And then she was our very first paid full-time ambulance driver during the day. And the other one was Renee Dyer, who back in the 90s was the municipal agent for the elderly. Also, there was one episode of COVID at the senior citizen housing, but they were able to contact trace, and they have really buckled down on and, you know, really put it to the residents that they need to wear masks and do social distancing. So that's under control. That's all.
Are there any other town councilors that wish to comment? I would just like to add that we also lost Park Spicer.
Oh.
Over the last few days. Park was the first selectman of Preston. He was also on the Board of Ed at one time. He was also the registrar of voters, a good friend of Ledger, and obviously owner of Parks Place, or one of the owners of Parks Place. So rest in peace, Park. Great sense of humor, good guy.
How old was he?
Anybody?
85.
Oh, okay, thank you. Okay.
Okay, any other comments? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the regular meeting minutes of December 9th.
So moved, Councilor Dombrowski.
There a second, please?
Second, McGrattan.
Any discussion? Roxanne, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Dombrowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ingles,
Yes.
Mr. Malone,
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan,
Yes.
Mr. Sebelia,
Yes.
Mr. Somm,
Yes.
Mr. Washington,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis.
Yes.
8 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries. Let's see. You have your communication list. I did not make any referrals. We'll move on to council subcommittee liaison reports. We'll start with admin.
The administration committee met this evening, and we had some routine appointments and new appointments, and our appointments are on the consent calendar for tonight's agenda.
Thank you. Any questions for admin? Next, community relations. Mr. Washington.
Sorry about that. The Community Relations Committee met last Wednesday. Not too much has changed. We have a meeting coming up next Wednesday, which we'll be meeting with the Mashantucket Pequot Tribal Nation. There's 3 things on the discussion with them. It's one is the policing, how we're doing on that with Mashantuckets, and also the police chief is coming to visit to give us a kind of a backdrop on what has he had more contact with town residents after he did his presentation to see if they're looking for town services that the police department kind of offers. The other part is we're going to be talking about the memorandum of understanding that come forth from the Mayor Fred had provided. They're on the surface, they've indicated they don't think it's necessary. We're gonna have some discussion on that. And there was, the other part was some discussion they wanted to have with us concerning the school board to see what the committee's position on that was. And so those will all be topics at our next meeting on the, I think it'll be the 18th, the next Wednesday. I won't say the date because I've been terrible all day with numbers. And that's my report. 20th. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Mike? I just had one comment in as far as the memorandum of understanding in regards to social services. And that is, you know, the reason we got ourselves into a little trouble is because everybody remembered 15 years ago differently. And if we don't get a signed memorandum of understanding, I can see ourselves in the same position 15 years ago, 15 years from now. And 15 years from now, I'll be pretty old. And I probably won't remember it. So if we don't get a memorandum of understanding, I would like to propose that we write a resolution. And that can be one-sided from our end. And we could say exactly what we said and what we agreed to and do it as a resolution. But that's just a thought if we can't get that memorandum. Mrs. Ingalls?
I wondered if the email thread, because the email thread is now part of the public record.
It is.
And so I wondered if that was enough. So I was not really terribly bothered by, you know, them deciding they didn't really want to do an MOU. Also, I think at this point, we're really committing to servicing Ledyard residents. The only reason this was ever an issue was because the tribe itself asked us to please send tribal members back to the tribe. So I think the default position to just go ahead and service all of our residents, it just is a little more sensible to me anyway. So, I mean, I'm certainly not opposed to just writing a resolution. It's more clean, but I just wondered if the fact that the email exchange is now part of the public record would be enough to remind everybody in coming years what the discussion was.
And I actually initially thought that was a good idea, except that it was only one person. It was not the tribe, it was one person from the tribe, if I remember correctly. Although everybody was copied to it, that's correct.
Next Wednesday, though, the tribe will be at the meeting. It'll be a discussion. And we're going to propose back forth. Our memorandum of understanding is what we wanted. And they'll be able to go on the record saying they don't think we need it because as long as the town is providing services to anybody who's living on, who's in the town on non-tribal land, is allowed to seek services from the town. I think once that goes on record, then I think, as Councilor Ingalls had kind of noted, I think that kind of puts a fork in it. And I don't think there's a need for that resolution because we'll have that, it'll all be documented that that was their position. And then the memorandum, they're not questioning the memorandum understanding on what it says. They're just saying they don't think we need it anymore. So as we had discussed it, the idea would be that we would actually hold on to that memorandum of understanding with all the paperwork. And letting the people who make the decision who can seek out town services, we're able to look at that document. It may be one-sided, but the tribe doesn't resist the document verbiage. They just don't think we need it. I don't think there's a need for a resolution.
Okay, I am going to ask my question though, why? Why won't they sign it? I am going to ask that question. I mean, if you
Well,
don't
that's
ask it, I will.
Well, that will come up during the meeting, because if they don't object to it, I don't know why they wouldn't sign it unless they don't want the only thing I could, and this is hypothesizing, not hypothesizing, but just thinking out loud, is it may be a case where they don't want to generate a piece of paperwork that shows them being treated differently. And if the memorandum of understanding, if they don't sign it, we do a resolution, it's going to say the same thing, that if you live within, stop me if I'm wrong, Mayor Fred, if you live within the town of Ledyard and you live on non-tribal land, then you would be able to request services from the town. And if that's the case, as long as everybody on the town side says that's it, then they can say, I wouldn't really care what their position would be personally, because they can come back later and go, you know what, we want our tribal members just to go to the tribe. And to that, I would say, if I'm a tribal person living and I'm paying taxes to the town of Ledyard, they can tell me they want me to go there, but I don't have to listen. So we're going to force them. They're going to have to tell us why. And I think that's going to be the reason that they don't want
That would satisfy me. Thank you.
Yep.
Mayor
Go ahead.
Fred?
Yeah, just following up on Councilor Washington's comment, one of the things that kind of precipitated this whole thing is that we had a meeting with the tribal council and the tribal council chair on July 17th of last year. And I arrived at that meeting with copies of meeting minutes from previous Mayor Rodolico and previous Mayor Mendenhall, and speaking specifically about service issues. And the response that I received was, well, you're misinterpreting whatever the meeting minutes were. And so the thought process was, okay, if we weren't understanding those minutes correctly from those two previous mayors and their meetings with previous tribal councils, maybe we can clear the air now with this simple MOU. And then further to that, we felt like this is the way to not have to worry about the public record, because the reality of it is, once that public record's 10 years out, yes, you can find it, but is it readily accessible to the next person in this seat, or that one after that, or that one after that? So we felt like, maybe really memorializing truly what was envisioned made sense. I would still say, and I don't disagree with the concept of the resolution, because that's something that's much more readily traceable than trying to work back on meeting minutes from a decade or more ago.
Councilor Dombrowski, you had a question.
Yeah, no, actually, I was gonna make the exact same comment that Fred did, that, memorializing things that happened in agenda minutes, things like that. Yes, it's on the record. Yes, it can be found, but it's not always easily trying to remember what meeting that actually occurred at, and then trying to find those minutes throughout all of the other minutes may not be as easily searchable as, here is a resolution. If the tribe does not want to sign the MOA, here is a resolution that at least here's codified. This is the town's standing, and really more set to the policy standard than what would be in a meeting minute.
Mike?
Just as a thought on that, to do a resolution, which it's 6 one way, half dozen of the other. I think if the concern, and we'll have to talk with the town, if their concern is them being called out, then I think looking at the memorandum of understanding that had been presented, I think there's things that the Community Relations Committee can do relative to taking that MOU, turning into kind of a general memorandum, general resolution in which it just targets people in the town who are town residents who live on town taxable or town set exempt, designated exempt land. So it doesn't even pull in the tribal prospect of it, but just talks about somebody who lives either on taxable property or tax exempt, like a church or something like that property, you know, would be allowed to be able to come and seek services from the town.
Mike, I agree with that. We don't have to make it specific that this is a resolution to tribal members, but this is, you know, a general resolution that this is how we're going to handle our social services within the town.
And I think the committee can take a look at that during the course of our process and put something together possibly. We'll talk with the committee.
That all being said, I have no doubt that in 15 years, if Roxanne was still here, she could find the minutes, 5 minutes or less, but we can't count on that either. Thank you, Mike. Anything else under community relations?
No. Thank you.
Finance, Mr. Solms.
Okay, Finance Committee met last Wednesday at 5 p.m. We discussed the farm exemptions ordinance, and we had questions about the spreadsheet that the tax assessor provided regarding the revenue impact to the town. And we have invited the tax assessor to attend our next meeting next Wednesday to help us understand the implications of implementing just the farm buildings exemption alone and how building and machinery exemptions are affected by Public Act 490. My understanding is they're not, but we want to make sure we completely understand the potential tax loss to the town if we pass this ordinance. So we're going to ask our questions and then probably most likely move to pass it. We also voted on the Ledyard Housing Authority ordinance to reduce their pilot payment from 10% of rent to 7%, with the difference of 3% to go into a capital account for future maintenance of the facility, along with an agreement which is required by CHFA between the town and the Housing Authority. We have since sent a letter to the authority asking for their input because both parties are required to sign that agreement before we can do this. And LHA is reviewing that ordinance now, and everything else is on the agenda for tonight.
Thank you. Any questions for finance? Hearing none. Land use.
Land use has not met since our last meeting. I have no report.
Okay. Liaison reports at this time. Anyone? Mr. Marshall sent his report, and that will be in your correspondence or on your agenda actually as well. Mr. Solms.
WPCA held its regular meeting in December, Tuesday, December 22nd. And earlier in the month at 6:45 a.m., a water treatment plant operator called to report that the center of Ledyard tank level was decreasing and 2 pumps at center of Groton pump station were on. And it was discovered that water was coming out of the meter pit on Route 117. A lot of details that I'll skip. Basically, the water level dropped. They restored the water level to its proper level as it should have been. They repaired the broken pipe in the meter pit, and that was caused by a pressure coupling that failed. Not the first thing to fail on the 117 water project. The pipe was relined. They put a new grip coupling on it, and they notified Connecticut DPH, and did not charge the town for any of the water that we lost. Also, past due receivables were corrected for October. They went from 16,000 in October down to 7,000 in November. They're fluctuating in that range, and it goes up and down, but really no trend, which is good. The WPCA has also requested a simplified budget presentation in the form of an Excel spreadsheet from Munis, and the assistant treasurer or finance director has not had time to provide it. So there was a suggestion that perhaps the new cleargov.com, I think it is, which prepares data in readable reports, might be a solution here. So I will take that up further, or the WPCA will, with the Assistant Finance Director. Also, testing on the Gallup Hill tank that is being removed found it has no lead or asbestos, but the bunker does. So the bunker is the concrete structure at the base. So it will be more expensive to demolish than the tank, actually. And there was some discussion about whether the town is the owner of the tank or the WPCA is the agent who's paying for it. My suggestion to them was that town taxpayers have paid for a lot of infrastructure. This is a WPCA responsibility. There was also a discussion regarding an RFQ for an engineering study for sewer line from Ledyard Center to the Highlands wastewater treatment plant. And there's been a meeting since then, and I think the mayor may have more to report on that. So I'll leave that to him. The WPCA is also updating the information content on their town website page because it's sorely out of date, so they're correcting that. They're also they're reviewing a proposal to replace all of the inside lights in their facilities with LED bulbs. And if they accept the proposal, they'll receive a $5,000 grant from Eversource. So the net cost will be $6,116. But since the total cost of the work will be about $11,000, if you count the grant, they're going to seek other bids just to make sure they're in keeping with the town purchasing ordinance. And finally, second to last, the Groton Utilities cut some small trees growing on Sandy Hollow Road. It was required by DPH. There were some public complaints about that, and they explained that Sandy Hollow Road is technically a dam, and trees cannot be allowed to grow in the right-of-way because trees eventually compromise dams. So they not only have to cut the small trees, they're also going to be cutting some larger trees growing along the road as it crosses the reservoir. So I think we should be prepared for more complaints. And lastly, the new water and sewer rates went into effect January 1st. And that's my report.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Solms? Seeing none, any other liaison reports? Okay, Mayor.
All right, good evening, everybody. Thank you. So as you know, we had our first winter storm. We had between 8 and 12 inches of snow. This dates all the way back now to December 16th and 17th. We had a fair number of complaints from that storm that we fielded in my office. And I think part of that was due to the fact that 5 of our 11 plow drivers are essentially novices. So we had to call the guys back in that weekend to finish the job and do it right. So they spent more time on Saturday getting the snow pushed back properly far from the curb. So hopefully they learned. We'll see if the winter continues as a snowless winter. Maybe they won't get more experience behind the plow truck, but we will see. Had a meeting following that the week before Christmas with our senator and both representatives, which was the purpose was to discuss the upcoming legislative session, which is now in full swing. As the Grahams alluded to, I did prioritize the Stonington Bridge as a key point, that if there is some level of funding at the state level to rectify that issue, that would be really great, because I felt like we were, just at a head on that. So I put that one forward. I put forward the Mashantucket Mohegan Gaming Fund, that we wanted to make sure that those funds remain stable as best they can, understanding that both casinos' revenues are down huge numbers. I heard one of the more recent ones as much as 70%. So we do think that number will change, but what could actually change is that the state holds back 80% of the slot revenues. So they could, in fact, just keep the towns consistent with the funding level and reduce what the state holds back. That whole formula has kind of reversed, where they used to distribute the lion's share of it, and now the state's holding the lion's share. The senator and the representatives also asked me to ask you to support a resolution for the tribal gaming and sports wagering online as a method to help the tribes. I think that's on your agenda tonight. Had a CCM legislative agenda meeting on January 7th. That's where they finalized their legislative agenda for the 166 towns that are part of CCM. And it was a really comprehensive, very detail-oriented proposal to the legislators. One of their key points, which was echoed again this year, of course, was keeping funding to municipalities stable, as well as a number of Board of Education-based initiatives, including financial reporting from the boards of education to general governments and whatnot. I attended a SACIA meeting, that's the Southeastern Connecticut Housing Alliance, on January 8th. We heard from Mayor Bronin, Luke Bronin's wife. Her first name escapes me, but she is working on a Desegregate Connecticut action plan. They have a very comprehensive action plan to desegregate Connecticut, in their opinion. One of what I believe is going to be one of the touchier points is a statewide zoning districts, which would replace some levels of community zoning. And the purpose of that is the feeling is that there is not enough affordable housing in a number of towns, and a number of towns work to thwart affordable housing. So they're looking to really take action on that. And I think they have a lot of horsepower behind them right now. So it's something we're going to have to keep an ear to and be mindful of. We also put together the Southeastern Connecticut Council of Governments legislative agenda that is going forward to our local delegation. Specifically, it involves education funding, special education following the child. That's an important one for Ledyard, but a lot of other towns, having heard the issues that they had, they also highlighted Board of Education oversight. It sounds like Ledyard, with 70% of each tax dollar going to the Board of Education, we're not alone in that. The lion's share of every tax dollar goes there, and they want to see some financial oversight. They also made a proposal to change the bottle bill. This was one that they submitted last year, to go from a nickel to a dime per can or bottle. And I joked with them that when I was 10 years old, I used to go out and pick up cans on the street for a nickel a piece and turn them in. And here I am at 50 years old, and I can still go out and pick them up for a nickel a piece. So something didn't happen to that math over those 40 years, but it probably should. And then the last item that we had on our COG legislative agenda was stabilizing pilot payments. When the state has not necessarily dealt in good faith in terms of pilot payments for state-owned, non-taxable or non-taxable properties in various municipalities. On a real positive front, and I'm sure all of you know, we did receive the additional CHAFA grant of $1.3 million for Kings Corner Manor. So we now have a $2.8 million grant in total between the DOH and CHAFA for Kings Corner Manor. So that's going to be really awesome. There's a tremendous amount of work that still has to go into it. The town planner had spent a lot of time putting together the grant with the housing development team, which is the group that's going to be overseeing the total project. But what we are told is that the town planner and the building official for the next 18 months are going to have a pretty substantial lift in the way of the workload down at Kings Corner Manor as work progresses. And both CHAFA and DOH let us know that once the projects are complete, each of those people needs to be prepared to spend 2 full days in the audit process at the end. So we're going to commit a lot of time and resources to the Kings Corner Manor project to see that this $2.8 million goes as far as it possibly can and it is done right. And things like tubs that have the typical 20-inch step over are now going to have a 2.5-inch curb to step over into a shower. So it's going to be much, much better for people aging in place. We did go 5 for 5 on grants last year. So we had the 5310 grant. That was the van grant for the senior center. That's moving ahead now. So we will see the new van this spring. We finally got the STEEP grant contract from the state. We were awarded that grant the first week of November, and we've been waiting ever since to receive the contract from them, and that finally came today. So things are looking good there. Another real positive was the grand list is up 7.57% overall. So that takes into account real estate, personal property, and motor vehicles. So really strong. If there was no tax increase this year, the mill rate would come down to 32.32. So that's our goal. COVID update, we've got 568 cases in town. We have 9 deaths. The most recent death, which was particularly troubling because this person at this point in my life, I consider fairly young at 54 years old. So very unfortunate 54-year-old male who passed. Don't know the underlying conditions, if any. The vaccine rollout is moving. We had a call tonight with the State Department of Public Health, and there are a lot of health districts that are on edge because the state rollout is going much slower than we think it should. And the number of vaccines, the doses that are available versus the people that are going to needs to improve, and it needs to improve quick. So I've been pressing on Steve Mansfield at Ledgerlight, who is obviously, that's our health district, to do everything that we can to make it happen. And I was also told that each vial holds 6 doses of the vaccine. And if they tap into a new vial at, say, 3 o'clock in the afternoon and a couple people don't show up, they might have a couple doses left at the end. And at the end of the day, they have to discard it if it's not used. And I said, you cannot let that happen. You have to have a short list of people that could be available on a moment's notice to take those vaccines, if that's what they choose, but to take those vaccines, because I said, I can't tell you how bad that looks overall if vaccines are being thrown away on a daily basis. So they agreed, and they said they do have a list of people that can come in very quickly. So they're still working on the 1A group, which are the medical people, EMS, fire, career firefighters, if they are also EMTs. The 1Bs are supposed to start early next week, which are frontline people. 65 plus sounds like was added to the group based on CDC's guidelines. Grocery store employees and congregate care workers and the residents. So I really hope that they can streamline. I know it's a huge lift for this rollout, but I hope they can streamline what they're doing to get the rollout moving in a faster, more orderly manner. And if it means opening up groups 1A and 1B, while 1B is going, 1As can still come in, great, but let's make it happen. I was also seated as the Council of Governments chairman on December 16th. So I am now the chair of the COG, and I am also co-chairing the long-term disaster recovery team. It's something that the governor has put together, and the previous COG chair held that position too. And so I now co-chair that with Deb Monahan from the TVCCA. And this is a longer term, it's for business, it's for people in their residences, whether it's rented or owned, and for health and well-being. So it's going to be a pretty interesting task. I think there's going to be some decent lifting involved in that. Today we had our first day of budget meetings with department heads. This is where the department heads present their budgets to me and justify their expenditures and their revenue streams, as well as their capital projects that they have proposed. So that went well. Our second round of that is tomorrow, and then Once my budget comes together, I will be passing it off, and the Finance Committee will do the same thing. Sandy Hollow Road, as I think, Bill, you alluded to, I couldn't believe that, we had received 4 or 5 calls at town hall, but I couldn't believe that Groton Utilities chose to go out there with the roadside mower to just beat those trees apart to comply with Department of Public Health's requirement to remove the trees along the dam. I still question, whether Sandy Hollow Road is legitimately a dam or not. I think there's multiple ways for water to leave that area. But be that as it may, Groton Utilities did get a call from the town of Ledyard, and they have been out there for the last 2 days, actually cutting with chainsaws now instead of beating the trees apart with the heavy equipment. And they're chainsawing the stuff down and chipping it and cleaning it up. It's too bad to see the trees come down, but they're under a notice from DPH. So, and then our last big issue that we've had, and anybody that's driven across Whalehead onto Vinegar Hill Road has seen the level of work that Eversource has been doing on the transmission line easement. And it's troubling to a number of people, and I've had to talk some people through it. It's a difficult thing, but I did a title search on a number of the on that easement, and the easement was put in place in 1959 as Connecticut Light and Power. So a number of those houses, Fawn Drive, I think is the cul-de-sac in particular, it was built in the late 90s. And the easement already existed and already went across a number of those lots. So it's difficult to see because the transmission lines sit there and nothing happens for many, many years. And then Eversource shows up and they clear cut and they're replacing the large utility poles that handle those transmission lines. And there's a house in particular at the corner of Vinegar Hill and Whalehead that, they just are right up to that easement area. So I've talked to a number of residents. I am going to attend a meeting with Eversource and the property owners at Fawn Drive next week to see if we can at least have Eversource do something to help screen those that have been really adversely impacted. So still working on that. And of course, it's budget season, so we're busy too. That's all.
Thank you. Fred, go ahead and first of all, congratulations on your chairmanship of the COG. That's very impressive.
Thank
and
you.
Also, how about a little bragging about the businesses across the street?
Oh my gosh, I almost forgot. So the former Ledyard Center School is going along nicely now. It took a while to get going, without a doubt, but the daycare facility is now open. That's on the far left side. There is a photographer and a studio. She has a studio in there. She is now open. A physical therapist is supposed to be opening this week. The Asian grocery store is now open. The Alumni Wine and Spirits is now open in there in the former gymnasium. And a barber shop will be opening fairly soon in there, as will it's either a financial advisor or an insurance company or a combination of both. But they have, the ball is definitely rolling on that. If you get to drive by at night to see the lighting that they did out in the parking area and the parking area up front, I think it looks fantastic. They did a great job of keeping the old school, repurposing it so it didn't go away. We didn't have to spend $1,350,000 to demolish it. And people that are people that have feelings for the old Ledyard Center School, well, it still remains. So I think that was a huge win. I'm really happy with how that went. And there's more to come, actually. There's a couple more tenants that are in queue. So more to come on that.
Excellent. Any questions for the mayor? Well, okay. Let's see. We have no old business. Would anybody like to amend the agenda under new business? I will entertain a motion for the, well, would anybody like to remove anything from the consent calendar? Items 1, 2, and 3. Hearing none, would someone like to make a motion to approve the consent calendar?
Mary, I make a motion that we approve the consent calendar.
Is there a second?
Second, Councilor Dombrowski.
Thank you. Roxanne, would you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Ingles,
Yes.
Mr. Malone,
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan,
Yes.
Mr. Sebelia,
Yes.
Mr. San,
Yes.
Mr. Washington,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski.
Yes.
8 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries. Moving on to finance items.
This is Counselor Psalms. I move to transfer $105,000 from account 210-40107-54015 Lantern Hill Bridge to new account 210-40107-54007-G0010 CLH Walk Bike Lane for engineering consulting services for design, application, permitting, and bidding services for the Lotsep Ledyard High School multi-use pathway and sidewalk extension project. This supersedes the motion of the same amount that was approved at the November 17 Town Council meeting.
Is there a second, please?
Councilor Malone seconds.
Motion's made and
Thank you, Tom.
seconded. Any discussion,
So,
Bill?
well, I just wanted to explain, we already approved this motion, but neglected to notice that the account numbers, some of the account numbers were missing. So this just adds the account numbers where the money comes from, where it goes to. Everything else is exactly the same.
Okay, I'll assume there won't be, well, is there any discussion, further discussion? Roxanne, would you call the roll?
Mr. Malone,
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan,
Yes.
Mr. Sebelia,
Yes.
Mr. Washington,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ingles.
Yes.
8 in favor, 0 opposed.
Next item, motion carries. Next item, please.
I move that the town council approve a revised Appendix A qualifying income schedule in accordance with Ordinance 200-005 Rev 1, an ordinance to provide property tax relief for certain homeowners aged 65 or over or permanently and totally disabled Rev 1 is contained in the draft dated December 14, 2020.
Councilor Malone seconds.
Thank you. So this is an ordinance that we've already approved. However, the state has changed the qualifying income limits. So they've gone for single from $37,000 to $37,600, and for married from $45,100 to $45,800. This is just the appendix, and the way all of our ordinances are now designed. When there is a rate schedule, it goes in the appendix, and all we have to do is change the appendix and approve it, as opposed to changing the entire ordinance.
Very good. Any questions or comments? Roxanne, would you call the roll?
Mrs. McGrattan,
Yes.
Mr. Sebelia,
Yes.
Mr. San,
Yes.
Mr. Washington,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski. Kevin, are you
Yes.
there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. All right. Mr. Malone,
Yes.
8 in favor, 0 opposed.
Yes, from Counselor Ingalls.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I is a yes. Okay, gotcha.
Motion carries. Next item, Bill.
I move to grant a bid waiver to Blum Shapiro in the total amount of $62,500 to conduct auditing services for the general government, WPCA, and schools for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2021. In addition, appoint Blum Shapiro to conduct auditing services for the general government WPCA in schools for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2021, in accordance with Chapter 3, Section 11 of the Town Charter, RFP number 2018-070, auditing services.
Council Malone seconds.
Thank you. Discussion?
So we are in the second year of our 2 one-year extensions. And because dollar amount went up slightly, 1%, and also because the ordinance requires that the town council annually designate an independent public accountant, we need to vote on this. We're very satisfied with Blum Shapiro. We're unanimous in our approval of the work that they do, the value that they add. But we will go out for bid next year, since this is the last year of the current contract in the two option years. So we just want to make sure that we're in accordance with the purchasing ordinance.
Thank you. Any questions? Roxanne, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Sebelia,
Yes.
Mr. Soms,
Yes.
Mr. Washington,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ingles,
Yes.
Mr. Malone,
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan.
Yes.
8 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries. Next item.
I move to recommend the town council approve the town council department fiscal year 2021-2022 budget in the amount of $176,342.
Council Malone seconds.
Discussion, please.
Thank you. So there is an increase of $590 in the auditor's fee. There is a decrease in operating expenses due to lack of travel by the town treasurer. So this total dollar amount is down slightly from last year. The rest of the dollar amounts remain the same.
Any questions? Roxanne, could you please call the roll?
Mr. Soms,
Yes.
Mr. Washington,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ingles,
Yes.
Mr. Malone,
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan,
Yes.
Mr. Sebelia.
Yes.
8 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries. Next item.
I move to approve the town council department fiscal year 2021-2022 capital improvement budget in the total amount of $3,580.
Council Malone seconds.
Discussion.
Thank you. So the 2 items in here are the annual investment of $1,500 set aside for possible future purchase of laptops for new counselors or replacements. We sometimes don't put money aside, and we often don't buy a new laptop because most of the counselors have their own. The other item is $2,080 for chairs for the town council dais. The chairs that we sit on, if we ever get back to use those chairs, were installed when the council chambers were created with the departure of the Ledyard Police Department in the 1990s. The wheels are literally falling off some of those chairs. The backs some of them are broken. So we think it is time to replace them. Thus the 2 items totaling $3,580.
Thank you. Any discussion? Roxanne, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Washington,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ingles,
Yes.
Mr. Malone,
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan,
Yes.
Mr. Sebelia,
Yes.
Mr. Soms.
Yes.
8 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries. I will make a motion to adopt or propose a resolution in support of the act authorizing sports wagering, internet gaming, internet lottery, and internet keno as contained in the draft dated January 4th, 2021. Is there a second, please?
Counselor Song, second.
Mayor, would you like to address this?
Sure. So as I mentioned, the senator and the two representatives, Representative France and Representative Conley, as well as Senator Austin, had approached me some time ago about this. Both the casinos are in our southeastern Connecticut area, and Foxwoods is right in our backyard. Both huge employers. Both have contributed upwards of $8 billion to the state through the Pequot Fund, and both are suffering immensely right now due to the COVID pandemic. So they are very much looking to take some of their gaming online to basically be competitive with other states that are allowing the same thing. And I don't want to see either of our casinos or their operations suffer. It hurts us all. It hurts a number of people in our town that are employed by those operations and a lot of ancillary businesses. So I hope that you will support it.
Very good. Any discussion, further discussion, questions? Mr. Washington.
I just want to kind of echo what the Mayor Fred said. I think given the fact that people are going to gamble, and I know some people are probably not big on online gaming and such, but I think anything we can do in support of our two gaming organizations that are here is in our best interest, especially when you think about all the auxiliary companies and groups and businesses that really rely on them to be successful in what they do so they can be successful. So I'm hoping that everybody will support this.
Thank you, Mike. Mary, did you have a question?
No, I did not.
Okay. Anyone else? Comment? Roxanne, would you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Engel,
Yes.
Mr. Malone,
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan,
Yes.
Mr. Sebelia,
Yes.
Mr. Song,
Yes.
Mr. Washington.
Yes.
8 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries. That was our final item. Our next meeting is January 27th. Hope everybody stays safe, and I hope that we will soon be able to sit in those new chairs. It's been a long time coming. I do miss everybody, so I'm sure we all feel the same. I will entertain from Kevin a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second, please?
Second.
Motion's made and second. This meeting is adjourned without exception. Thanks, folks.
Thanks, everyone.
Night,
Good night,
everyone.
everybody.
Good night,
Good night.
everyone.
Everybody wave.